So Australian, we've got 4 excellent artist managers from around the globe. Cath in Australia has stayed up through the middle of the night for us, which is fantastic. So let me introduce Cath first. She works with 4 artists and 5 producer writers, and she's also expanding into non-music artists. She's a very experienced artist manager, and she also currently runs the Association of Artist Managers in Australia. So she's heavily involved in organizing that industry and cross-industry dialogue. Carina Sava is based in Romania. She manages Varma, who are a huge band in that market, and also the career of Tudor Krilla, who's the singer from Varma and has a lot of work on TV and other areas. So Carina's very experienced in brands and developing beyond just the music side. Over in the States, we've got Dan Crutchkow, who's got a ridiculous career. Started out with Elton John's Rocket management. He's been involved in innovation at Universal, too many artists he's worked with. And currently he's at, his management roster over there includes Sia. I'm struggling because I've got the name of it's Crush Management. It's Crush Management, so it's Sia, Alanis Morissette, Fall Out Boy, and a bunch of others there. And Tarsame Mittal is a serious entrepreneur over in India, and he works with some very big artists. He's recently set up a comedy division, which is, again, an example of how managers like Cath and Tarsame are working beyond just music. And Tarsame has also set up a news platform for the industry. He set up the Bollywood Music Project, which pulls together like a festival for artists in multiple cities. And he's fantastically set up the All About Music Conference, which is the main music industry conference in South Asia, and looks at how to develop the industry. And Carina has set up Mastering the Music Business, the main music industry conference in Romania. Tarsame, over to you. You've worked with one of your artists, Arijit Singh, for a hell of a long time. Is this just a business relationship with him or something else?
So Jake, first of all, I want to congratulate Sandbox Summit, Paul and the entire team at Musically for doing something so good. Thank you for inviting me, and hi, my fellow panelists. Hi, Catherine. Hi, Carina. Hi, Dan. And Jake, it's nice to see you. But to your question, no, it cannot be just a business relationship. I don't think it is even possible for any manager in the world, and I might be completely wrong, but that's what I feel, to have a pure business relationship with an artist. It is always, a relationship which goes beyond business. I mean, if you ask me what a manager means to an artist, I mean, he is a friend, a psychologist, a financial planner, an advisor, a 911 service for the artist, apart from doing the business and the professional service. So for me and Arijit, I really look up to him. He's one of the nicest human beings I've ever come across in my life. And we are family, I mean, not just business. Obviously, we keep our personal life and professional life separate, but that's what it is. It's not just a business deal. It's not possible.
Cath, when you got that extra responsibility that Tarsame's just described, that you're not looking after just their business interests, you're also working with them on something that they hold dear to their heart, delivering their message to their audience. That must put a lot of responsibility on you.
I think it's an incredible amount of responsibility. In fact, I think sometimes that can be quite a weight on a manager's shoulders. And I also think that often we don't think about our managers' mental health and well-being in all of this. I think we spend a lot of time thinking about our artists, looking after them, keeping an eye out for them, strategizing for them, trying to realise their vision. And in amongst all of that, sometimes we can get a bit lost. So I think it pays to actually, put the oxygen mask on, yourself first, and really look after yourself in order to look after them.
Dan, you've worked with you currently work with a large roster, and you've worked with a lot of artists. how do you keep driving their business forward while at the same time looking at their overall agenda? If they have a creative agenda and they want to go to the market in a certain way, are you going to tell them, no, this is the way the industry works? Or are you going to be led by the artist on the business side? Are they only in charge of creative, or?
No, I think, how do we do it? So I think one answer to that is we have a good sized staff at Crush, right? We have several managers, we have a few partners at the company, and we also have a very large marketing staff. So we have the ability to, sort of take our destiny into our own hands and do a lot of the work ourselves, as opposed to relying on others. We do rely on quite a lot of people, whether it's record labels or concert promoters and so on, but we're able to kind of get out of the starting gate ourselves, which is really important. That way we can sort of take the artist's vision and just get going and move it forward that way. And in terms of, I think your question was a bit, are we playing by like the rules and doing what the business is doing? I think the answer for us specifically is absolutely not. Rock and roll, to generalize it, has always been about going against the rules and having fun and doing things differently. So yeah, like we don't want to do the same thing that everyone's been doing. Our artists don't want to do that. We want to break the mold and have people copy what we're trying to do.
So that was a theme that came up earlier on in today's Sandbox, both from Troy Carter and also from K Camp and Genius, that each artist is really trying to create their own path and do something individual and different. And that's great, but that makes it really difficult for you guys as managers. Carina, where you've worked with established artists and you started working with them after the point they become a brand, but you've also worked with new artists, how do you define who they are, what their brand, their identity is? Do they know?
I don't think they know, or they should. Maybe they should know. When they're just starting, they usually have no idea. Sometimes you find an artist that maybe knows where he or she wants to go, but usually they don't. But usually they find out. Sometimes when they write their own music, they find it through their lyrics, through what they try to express creatively. Sometimes you might even find an artist that, I don't know, has more than music into his or her agenda, and it becomes easier for you to work on his or her brand. But there is a huge difference between established artists, because I worked with some that were established at the moment that we started working together, and newcomers. I think that sometimes we maybe even, at least in Romania, we use very easily this word artist. I mean, there are a lot of wannabe artists who, just because they attend this TV show, or just because maybe they are doing some covers on YouTube, they already consider themselves artists, but they are not yet.
Tarsame, you're nodding.
I'm just listening to Carina, and I'm sure every manager anywhere, whichever country or state you belong to, will feel, the same feeling. Artist changes, from the time they join you, and it depends on human to human. I mean, artist to artist. I would not say all artists are the same, but it's a very common feeling. Every manager has at least one experience in life where they've grown with the artist, and they keep, seeing the changes in the artist from the time they start and from the time when they become big and popular. And that thing when Carina said wannabe artists, I mean, I have a different terminology. We always feel that in India, let's assume in Mumbai, there are a million musicians, in multiple singers, composers, lyricists, music producers. Out of the million, I would say about 100 are successful already. There are about 900 who are talented but not successful. There are about 10 who are not talented but still successful. But 990,000 of them are confused that they are artists or they're musicians. So the majority population, the majority, the people who says that we struggle a lot and we don't get work, is about somebody, because it's a gut feeling. There is no rule and regulation of being a successful artist or a popular artist. Sometimes an artist who is not a great musician also become, really, really popular. I mean, we've seen so many examples of that. So more than 90% who are trying to be successful, I don't think, I'm sorry to say, but I don't think that, they have the knowledge of the art properly. They're confused. So that's wannabe when she said, I mean, I was completely, aligned with her.
Dan, it's so hard with the investment of time. Troy Carter in the previous panel talked about labels and investing money and managers investing time. And clearly both do a lot of both, but it was a great generalization. How do you decide, apart from this is great music and we're passionate about the artist, how do you decide who you work with when you're going to invest so much time and resource in them?
Well, similar to what Tarsame was just saying, it's you have to identify someone who's got some very important attributes, right? Are they talented, right? You obviously want to make sure someone's very talented. Something for us that's really important is ambition. For us, we want the artists we work with to have the greatest ambition in the world. They want to be the biggest artists in the world. And once they make it, they want to go further and further and further and push boundaries. Like, we played clubs, now we're in arenas. How do we get to stadiums? Let's go figure that out. What do we do after stadiums? Is there anything? I don't know, but let's figure it out. Like that level of ambition, where it's always pushing forward and never being satisfied.
Have you got an illustration of how you would get to a stadium?
Sure. We manage Green Day, Fall Out Boy, and Weezer, 3 of our acts. I think, all acts who've played amphitheaters, arenas, and a handful of stadiums here and there. And I think, putting a bill together that we did actually just over a year ago called the Hella Mega Tour. It's those 3 acts playing stadiums around the world. It was a no-brainer tour, and we sold hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of tickets in a very short period of time with that bill. It's the old 1 + 1 = 3 model, but sometimes it's really difficult to do and really difficult to figure out. But because we did manage all 3 acts, we were able to get everyone together, put together, you could argue one of the biggest rock bills of the last 10 years. It sort of rose above everything else and just made so much noise. And we saw, I think in London, we sold 70,000 tickets in a weekend. You put those combinations together and you get creative with it, and you figure out how to make it work, and you can achieve things you just didn't think were possible independently. We're really excited to get this out the gate next summer. Fingers crossed on all that.
Cath, Dan's got massive resources in-house and a bunch of artists, and they collaborated there. And we heard on the previous panel how content owners like Disney are pulling away from streaming services so that they can push their content directly to the consumer. Both record labels and artists have a problem in that the platforms that they use control that relationship with the consumer. Dan's got a great advantage there and an experience of artists working collaboratively together to pool their resources and deliver that power. How do you do that as independent artists on a smaller roster? Are you finding more cooperation between managers and artists in how they access channels and develop their presence in the market?
Yeah, it's interesting you should say that. I think there's probably a couple of things. I think Dan's very lucky to have those resources at hand as a very established manager with a really, decent sized company and really well-established artists. I think if you're a younger manager just starting out in this current time, I think the ability to draw upon in-house marketing, in-house digital becomes next to impossible. You have to be that person. You have to actually draw from every single piece of your skill set. And where you don't have that skill set, you need to build it. And then in turn, you need to apply that with your artists to try and build them in a meaningful way. As far as having those direct relationships, I think that post-COVID, the game has changed slightly. And I think we're not entirely sure of what the medium and long-term impacts of that are going to have upon our particular profession. But I do know that we're going to have to think outside the box. We're going to have to be pretty innovative. And we're going to have to connect with our audiences as much as we can directly, and be as unique as possible, and really content and developing content, and not just any content but meaningful content, is pretty key at the moment. I know that, you know, where I'm based at the moment in Melbourne, where we've been in a stage 4 lockdown for the last 6 weeks, so we have not had any other human contact for that 6-week period. So it's been a really interesting exercise in how, you know, how to connect artists who are based here with their audiences in a way that does not involve any in real life experience. And that's been really interesting for us here.
Carina, the ability to build a brand, as Cath is touching on there, that accesses the audience through multiple channels. It's not just about getting a track on radio or getting a track on a playlist. In the next year or so, will you focus more on that than you have done historically? Is that an area that you need to develop the artists on? It's something that you understand, but do your artists understand that they need to find all these different channels to market, because it's no longer just a record store, a radio station, a live show?
First of all, I would like to add something to what Dan said before. The fact that the artist should be talented, that he or she should be ambitious. I would add that it has to be very hardworking. It's not only about ambition, because if the artist comes to you and says, I want to play on arenas, do something about it, it's one thing. If he wants to be involved and he is able to work for it, it's another story. And that gets me to your question, because yeah, if you have an artist who is involved in what you're doing, he will understand. He will understand how things work. He will understand the strategy. Actually, I believe that you should build your strategy with the artist. It's not something that you do for the artist. You should do it together. And the artists that I work with, they do understand what we're trying to do. They don't always like it. I mean, sometimes they feel like they're being pushed out of their comfort zone, but they play along because they understand that they have to adapt. And it's been rough, of course, for everybody, but they did a lot of I don't know, we did some Zoom meetings with the core fans. They hated it because they felt that it's not the same thing, but they did it anyway because they understood that they had to keep in touch with their fans. We did a lot of online concerts. We tried to be to get some money on the table, and they were playing, I don't know, just to speak to the camera. So yeah, they do understand, just to answer to your question.
Tarsame, what I'm seeing in the UK at the moment is the 3 major record labels have spent, I think since about 2016, they've really got ahead of the curve. They've built lots of resource, they've developed their teams in-house, so they have specialists for podcasting, for different types of sync, for Instagram, for visuals. They have these amazing teams, and any artist who signs for a major label at the moment is in a really good position. Outside of that, the artist needs their manager, assuming most artists are not on a major label, to really have a width of skills in their team. You started out as we all do as an independent operator, how have you gone about building your team? Are you reactive to the things your artist needs so that you bring in data people or marketing people based on when you need them? Or have you had a vision of building a company? Has this happened by accident or design?
So to answer that, Jake, I'll have to first explain that India is really a different market than anywhere else in terms of management. We are the first breed of organized managers, and managers are the booking agents in India. 90% of managers, so maybe I'm being really considerate, 95% of managers are just the booking agents in the country. They are primarily hired for getting live gigs, and they just take a commission and make the artists earn money. They are not involved in the creative process of content and stuff like that, because it is purely dependent on Bollywood to a large extent, the film industry. So we are a growing economy in terms of management. We are still reaching there. There are very few companies who actually do a 360-degree job of what a manager does, from planning the career and stuff like that. We also started as a booking agent, calling ourselves managers. After a few years, we realized we might be making money, but we don't do management as such. And then we started younger artists, and we look at 360-degree, work for them, right? From getting them content, getting them label deals. Also, most of the artists are not signed to a major label in this country. T-Series is the biggest music label. In the last 5 years, they've also become one of the biggest film producers in the country. Okay. Another Yashraj is another music label. They are also film producers in the country. Eros is another label. Z is another label. They are also film producers. So most of these big labels, apart from Sony and Universal, they are all film producers as well. And the total number of artists which are signed to all the music labels, all the top music labels, will not be more than 10 or 15. Most of the artists are not signed to music labels. So the requirement, the environment is completely different. And to answer your specific question, yes, we are, evolving every day. And when we started, like how Catherine said, as a young manager, we didn't have the budgets or means to, hire specific people or special people. We would work overtime and work with random people, designers, social media, and every day the role is changing. Today social media and digital has suddenly become extremely important. Technology has become really, really important. A lot of things which I personally hated, as a person. I have to learn those things. I have to be on the top of those things. So yes, we are hiring new people on the basis of affordability. Where we can't afford to have somebody in-house, we take help of some friends and consultants, because in terms of business, whatever we say, you have to be extremely lucky if you are able to meet your ends. You have to be really, really lucky. We have a large team. We have a 70 people team across our organizations, and we are really finding it difficult, but we are happy that we didn't lay off anyone and we are surviving. But let's hope, everything goes well. But we are actually changing every month. I don't know what happened 3 months later. If this continues for further, we might completely shift our teams to the digital focus or tech focus. The live might not be very important for us. The film music is not releasing. We might focus our complete focus to the non-film music. So it's very evolving and changing. There is no specific formula or a stage where we are in. I hope I'm able to, answer the question.
That's great. Yeah, I think there's a convergence happening in that if India is coming from a different starting point to Australia, you're both moving towards a point where per artist and therefore per audience base, you're developing a strategy and then you're picking which channels you reach through. Some will lean towards social media, others will lean towards a live side. You're building a strategy and an agenda, maybe incorporating esports and games and all these different routes, hundreds of them now, as opposed to like just 3 or 4 to get there. And that's becoming globally relevant to all artists. Cath, how do you finance that? If you're an artist in a country like Australia or Romania, where the population is relatively small compared to the US and India, how do you get early stage funding? Because it seems to me that it's crucial that the artist has a manager to cover all of these business roles so the artist can get on with being creative. But the whole business is predicated on an old model where labels provided the investment, or in India, film companies provided the investment. Any clues?
No, it's actually a really good question, and I think it's it depends. There's a lot of different routes to funding. I think over here in Australia, we're lucky we have access to quite a bit, particularly at the moment, a lot of local, state and federal funding, government funding. So there's quite a bit of money that's been circulating around various regions in Australia and also nationally in order to create new works or to market or to basically get material out there and create as much content as we can. So at the moment, that's a really good option for us. I think there's also a lot of private investment that goes on within that as well, whether that be via family or friends. Sometimes it's actual professional angel investors who have an interest in a particular artist. And I guess that those would be some of the different options or opportunities we would have over here to get to market. Also keeping in mind that I think creating music for many artists now is it's a lot more accessible to do so. It's probably a lot cheaper as well, particularly if the artist themselves is their own producer. I think that can very much be, you know, a very helpful thing from a creative perspective.
So it's definitely, it's hard to describe what you guys are doing at the moment because it's, as I keep repeating, it's different for every artist. And so you need to build a different model. Dan, you've got a big team in-house. Can you just briefly give us an overview of some of the skills and resources that you've got, which has basically come about from Crush reinvesting year after year on your revenue?
Right. I mean, in the early days of Crush, I wasn't at Crush in the very beginning. I actually helped I was at a record label and helped them work, you know, a couple of the acts when they were getting started. So that's how I met Bob and Jonathan, who started the company. But yeah, the company was very small in the beginning. It was a few people. It didn't have a marketing staff. It didn't have a West Coast office. It was just a couple guys in New York. And you know, they started, you know, Fall Out Boy was essentially the first act, and I helped them with that. And you know, we sort of, you know, brick by brick got that thing going. And then over time, you know, they sort of developed a bigger career, which enabled us to find more acts. They found more acts, I should say. And it got to a point where I had expressed interest in maybe coming over there, and they had expressed some interest internally about growing the company into a marketing team. And I think, you know, the idea was sort of doing it brick by brick, right? So, you know, I came in first. They actually had a digital marketing person there before I was there. I think digital is such a big part of our focus, and it's always been since the beginning. So we start with digital, right? That was actually my expertise, and I think it still is. But that was something I was doing at the labels. So very heavy digital, and then as we got a little further with that, we realized, oh, in digital we need to create a lot of content. So how do we go do that? That's really hard to do, as a lot of people have said. You know, it's hard to do externally, right? It's a lot of back and forth. You have to find people. Do you have budgets? This, that, all these different problems with that. So we found someone who could create content and brought that person in, right? So now we're spending time creating our content and then marketing that content on I guess it was social media at the time. MySpace maybe was probably part of it. Email lists, websites, whatever it may have been. Facebook was obviously a thing that was sort of getting going at the time. And I think that process just kept happening, right? We'd get a little further and said, oh, wow, it would be really great if we could do our licensing in-house, our music syncs, right? So I started dabbling in that. And it got to a point where I didn't have enough time to do that and look after digital and manage these people. So we hired a sync person. We just kept repeating that process until we got to where we were, you know, brick by brick. And you know, I think when you hire someone, it's a cost, right? What we found was when we would hire someone, it would actually help the company generate more revenue. So when we were ready to hire someone new, it wasn't a cost. Yeah, yes, it did cost something, but the company would generally succeed far more than we had been after we brought that extra person on. So we're just really careful about who it was, what it was, and sort of focusing the energy that way. And I think, you know, was your bigger question about how do we spend our time now, focusing on things? Was that the
absolutely, yeah. You've got an overview of how many. So we got to this staff, like, how do we focus on what Green Day wants to do versus what Fall Out Boy wants to do, and so on. And I think it's like when there's a creative idea out there that everyone's on the same page with, you know, we just roll with it. We find it fun. You know, we don't have 100 artists. We have 15. It's not like we're drowning like that. So when there's a creative idea out there, as long as the timing works for everyone, we go. I think that's what gets everyone excited to come to work every day. You never know what idea is going to come up. You know, oh, we did this song, or we have this great video idea, or we want to do this funny little scheme. You know, whatever it may be. You know, when those ideas come up, you see everyone's eyes light up, and everyone jumps in, and everyone has ideas on how to go with it. So I think we have it at a really good place where we don't have too many acts, but we have enough, you know, like we were saying earlier with the talent, the ambition, as Carina said, hardworking. I did leave that out. That's highly important. You can't have ambition without hard work. But, you know, our staff has those attributes as well. They're all really talented. They're all super ambitious. They all work really hard, and they're excited to come to work every day. Sorry, say it again. I'm hearing huge risk here from just looking at it from a business perspective. You know, we started this with all four of you saying how important that the artist is, and you want to help them get their message out there. But it's crazy. You're adapting based on the new direction that the artist or the audience wants to go in. So you're flexible, which is challenging, and you enjoy that. But that's not normal to the sort of corporations that have dominated the music industry traditionally, that they've invested in assets. And then also you don't have any real security because you're not owning intellectual property, musical works or sound recordings in perpetuity. You have service agreements with artists, and there's a lot of responsibility on your part. So the artist could easily become dissatisfied. It seems to me that if the artist is to have more control over their careers, the managers need to have some more security and become more investable. And we're hearing from you guys how you're reinvesting your own money endlessly, and sometimes there's outside individuals will invest, high net worth individuals, or there's funding available. But it's not really a standard model based on agreements and contracts. It's much more a passion project. To any of you, do you see ways that this will change? It feels like we've come out of an old model. The paradigm has shifted, but we're still stuck with the business models and the contracts from the old system.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's based on trust, right? I mean, without trust, nothing's going to work. So that's something we spend an enormous amount of time building with the artist. That way, when it is time to go, there's no second guessing. We just roll. Yeah, there is tremendous risk in it all. But I think for us, that trust is a big part of it. You know, it helps the machine roll every day. Yes, we don't own the music in most cases. We don't own, you know, assets, copyrights, what have you. But you know, we're always building towards the bigger goal. And as long as our artists have, I keep repeating myself, but they keep having that ambition and they're willing to work, there's always money to be made in that. So it's like, you know, we play the long game with a lot of trust, and it tends to work out pretty well for us.
Tarsame, you recently got Haridy to talk to the legendary composer A.R. Rahman online. Was that hard to do? Because he's a shy guy who plays his music. I don't see him doing a lot on social media.
It was difficult, and yes and no both, because we've been trying to do this since 2.5 years now. And I think the only one of the good thing which happened due to COVID was that it was possible, because both of them had to do it digitally. They didn't have to go out of their own comfort to do this. It was easy because they both love each other. They both respect each other. And I mean, we keep on laughing about this, and I'm still smiling when I say this, that a conversation between two people who don't talk, you know. So two people interviewing each other, talking to each other, who generally doesn't talk. I mean, two of them are known to be the most shy musicians in the country. And they had a complete heartfelt conversation. The conversation started with music, ended with music. It was all about music. They kept on speaking, discussing about classical music, how did they use those specific tunes, and transcending information, those orchestra, those symphony, and those kind of stuff. They did not talk about the business aspect of music at all. Okay, they did not sing and perform at all. You know, so it was like a really cool conversation, and most musicians and anybody who loves music loved the conversation. So yeah, I mean, that was really cool.
Carina, that's two really famous artists talking to each other. It's not a new recording. That side of the artist-fan relationship, fans eat that stuff up, don't they?
They definitely do. And I really love putting artists together with their fans by any means. I mean, we try to do, as I was mentioning before, Zoom conversations, because that's what we got these days. But we have groups on WhatsApp. Sorry, we have groups on WhatsApp with our core fans for each of the artists, and we keep updating them. They are the first ones to receive the news about a new song that they will get, or special footage, personalized videos from the artist. I mean, I think it's essential to have your core fans close to the artist.
So you're really sort of managing that fan relationship.
Yeah.
And sometimes the fans try and take things off in their own direction. You had that recent stuff with the Rosanna cover. Perhaps you can illustrate that for us.
Yeah, Africa. But yes, there was a moment of Rosanna as well. Yeah, that was fun. It was, you know, talk about just sort of like playing sort of the storyline, right? A fan online for some fun reason decided to sort of like do a daily torment to Weezer about, hey, you should cover the Toto song Africa. And I'm like, yeah, that's funny. And then it just kept happening every day. And then, and it was all in good fun. It was great. I think at one point the band said, well, all right, let's just do it. Why shouldn't we? But of course, being Weezer, they had their fun take on it, and they actually covered Rosanna instead, another big Toto song, and dropped that. When they did that, it sort of became the trolling the trolls, and the internet blew up, and it was really funny, and everyone had a good laugh. Got to listen to a fun cover song. But what they had up their sleeves a few days later was actually dropping the Africa cover as well. So when that happened a few days later, the internet lit up even bigger. I mean, it was just like, I can't believe this actually happened. You know, this is the craziest thing ever. And the band went on to perform it on TV and so on and so forth. And it became such a fun project. The band decided to do an entire cover album that came out shortly after their studio album they were working on at the time. So sort of two albums happening at once. And it became a pretty big moment for the band in the most like organic possible way. There's no schemes here. No one was in a room saying we should do this. You know, it just happened, and we went with it. And I think the beauty of that being just so organic and playing out in such a fun way, it just made it added so much to what it actually was. And you know, it did wonders. And, you know, always looking for those things out there. The artists are always looking for that. Like, how do we have fun with these fans, right? It's, there was a guy, I think his name was Kevin Kelly. I might have it switched. I think it's Kevin Kelly, wrote in Wired years ago about 1,000 fans. Like, you don't need millions, you just need thousands. And, you know, we have some small acts and we have some really big acts. And even with the really big acts, it's all about the 1,000 fans. And, you know, maybe it's more than 1,000, but you know, you don't need millions. You need to focus on your fan base and play to them, and, you know, give them what they don't know they even want yet, and try to stay ahead of everything. Don't be reactive. You can be reactive and you can have fun with that. And I think
that's a key point, isn't it? The steering that line, that's management, steering that line between being reactive and proactive and telling the story. The Q&A button on this Zoom chat, if any of you've got questions for these guys, please throw them into the Q&A. Cath, we're hearing there about, I'm thinking about how artists are more in control and empowered, and we've heard there a little bit about how the fans can take control or can at least steer what they're interested in, which is for any business is fantastic, to have that relationship with your audience, your consumer, where there's an emotional engagement and you can do stuff that rewards each other. Is that ultimately the expression of where the artist business is going, that it is all about the artist-fan relationship? And that's the hardest thing. I mean, is that possible for anyone else to run other than the artist and the manager? Because everyone else is working in silos?
I think it's been, the relationship has been pretty pivotal to an artist's success for some time. I think it's at the heart of everything. The artist-fan relationship is kind of paramount. I think it's just become a bit more obvious, particularly now without that layer of live performance to cushion everything. I think this idea that you have to interact with your fans and listen to them, and in your own unique voice as well, which is, I guess, coming to your question of whether others can manage that relationship. I think depending on how many fans you have within your community, you may need that assistance and that help. But I still think ultimately the fans know. They know if it's your artist. They know if it's you. There is a unique voice there that the artist has. And I think the fan craves that direct relationship and that direct line of conversation with that artist. And I think the artist, to a great degree, owes the fans that kind of relationship. I think it's just about where the line is for the artist and what they're comfortable with, and how comfortable they are interacting with their fans, and how, you know, where those boundaries are and what the structure is around that. And I think that there's a lot there that you have to flesh out with an artist. And it changes over time, as we were saying, as the journey develops and changes, you know, so does the relationship. And you have to be able to react to that. And you have to be able to, you know, find different ways of making that connection.
Sia is probably the artist who, for me, has most exemplified how to react to the demands of the modern era, that you're told go on social media, do all these things. So she put the wig on and made a thing out of not doing the thing that everyone, I don't mean the management company, but everyone else would assume that she should be doing. So I think that's iconic. I also think with Chance the Rapper has kind of changed the industry in that he's the first artist to go all the way to that huge success. There's been other artists who have independently released after they've been built up by labels, but he's the artist who's taken it independent from day one and stayed there, and he and his management deserve a lot of credit for that as huge influencers on all of us. You four today, you all worked so hard. Thank you so much for giving up your time.